Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Stop Guessing. Buyers reveal what they really want from their law firms. My name's Gregg. I'm the co-founder and CX strategist at ClearlyRated. And we'll get started here in about 60 seconds, but I want to give people a chance to get into seats. Thank you for joining us. While we're doing that, I'll do just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to be having this slide deck available. There additionally is, if we want to go to that next slide, Darreon, we've got the ability to download this full report as well. And so there's a QR code there. There's another one at the end. If you miss this one, I'll drop it into the chat as well. But this is an important report that we have done the last handful of years, just releasing it, which is pretty exciting for us. And so we'll be walking through that today, and we'll go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, my name's Gregg. I'm the founder and client experience strategist for ClearlyRated, which means that I get to spend a lot of time geeking out in the data, which is why I invited my data BFF, Darreon Day, who heads our research and analytics team, to join me on the call today. He's really, for the past decade, been at the forefront of research into professional services, specifically around buyer behavior and client experience insights. So really thrilled to have him leading a lot of the conversation today as well. Darreon, welcome to today's call.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Appreciate you having me. And yeah, mirroring Eric's sentiments, we are very excited to be sharing our findings here. And so let's go ahead and dive into some of the background here. So as Eric mentioned, I've been working on this a long time. Eric's been working on this a long time. ClearlyRated itself has been conducting annual industry-specific research for more than a decade. Our main purposes here are to establish our satisfaction benchmarks in the form of Net Promoter Score. And some of you on the call may be familiar with our benchmarks, and we established those for quite a few of the B2B service industries that we service. We also use this research to identify emerging trends, and we study topics of importance to the industries that we serve. So this research gets a lot of use both internally and externally, and excited to share it with you all. So for the legal industry in particular, we explored topics such as current and ideal service experiences of clients and buyers. We also looked into things like perceptions of technology and specifically AI, which is ever present these days. We also looked into buyer behavior and kind of looking through how buyers behave throughout that entire journey. So this survey was fielded in Q4, so October of 2024, and the overall study surveyed over 1,100 buyers and users of B2B services. And for law firm clients in particular, our sample is 153 of those buyers which have identified themselves as clients of law firms within the US. And a little bit of background, we do extensive cleaning and checking and to ensure data quality here and make sure that we're talking to the right people for this audience. A little bit more on a profile of who our respondents are. We've got a median age of respondent of 47 years old. On the top right, we have a chart showing the respondent organization size as indicated by the number of employees in that organization. So we've got a pretty good distribution. We've got just over a third that are at smaller organizations or 100 or fewer employees, or I should say just fewer than 100 employees. Our largest bucket is the 100 to 999 organization size. We've got 42% coverage there, and then the remainder are at our larger organizations. The top industry represented, these would be client organization industries represented, are real estate, software technology, healthcare, construction, manufacturing, and professional services. We actually have a pretty wide range of industries represented. These are just a few of them. And then we do also ask our respondents about the specific services they're using with their partners. And the top ones indicated that were used are general counsel, corporate, tax and financial, regulatory compliance, litigation, and employment. So a broad swath of services used. So we have pretty good coverage amongst our respondents here. So the key agenda, today's agenda is we're going to go through nine key insights that we've taken from this year's research on the industry. So we've got organized our 9 key insights into 3 main parts, and we've got economic and technological trends impacting law firm clients. So the 3 sub-bullets here are our insights around clients are struggling with economic uncertainty, perhaps unsurprisingly. More clients are investing in automation. And additionally, AI is changing those client expectations in general and of their law firms. So, how legal buyers are making decisions is our second section. And we start with how buyers start the process, and they may be starting with referrals, but online reputation management helps seal the deal and definitely helps us to win business. Additionally, we're going to look at the concepts of buyers wanting to de-risk their purchase decision, as well as the concept of what a day one firm is and how those have the best chance of winning business. And then last in this section, we're going to talk about how thought leadership is a powerful tool for influencing prospects to ultimately become clients. Last section and Eric's favorite section is how law firms can improve the customer experience as well as their bottom line. And the 2 main points here are going to be around communication being the key to satisfaction and retention, and then specifically looking at effective onboarding processes and how those lead to lasting relationships. So let's go ahead and dive right in here. We're going to start with the first section here, which is, as a reminder, it's economic and technological trends impacting our law firm clients. So the first insight that we've pulled out is clients are struggling with economic uncertainty. So our data shows that 55% of respondents rate current economic conditions as good or excellent, while 45% are rating economic conditions as only fair or even poor. Now, there is a big caveat to this that, as you may recall, this survey was fielded in Q4 of last year, so perceptions in this area have changed already since then. So, Eric and I have been discussing the economic policy uncertainty measure out of Stanford and Northwestern, and that indicates that these figures that we're showing here are definitely a baseline of uncertainty that has most assuredly increased in that time. So the main point being is clients are struggling with this uncertainty, and this is an opportunity for us to help guide them through this as best we can in our service relationships. Additionally, we also found that we had an equal split at the time of survey, at the time of the research was conducted. We had an equal split in those that said the economy was getting better and those that said the economy was getting worse. Very similar story. Those numbers have shifted in the last couple quarters to now a significant more number are indicating a negative shift of their economic perceptions. So further on this insight, we wanted to look at what clients are doing to combat this economic uncertainty. And we found that they're combating this and trying to counterbalance this in a multitude of ways. Specifically, some of the top things that clients are focused on are investing in technology, specifically to improve their efficiency. They also are undertaking some financial considerations like reevaluating existing budgets, as well as reducing internal costs there at the bottom. We also have things like focusing on employee engagement and retention. So in order to reduce the risk of those, very impactful internal churn, and then also heightened attention to risk management and compliance. So we also have a finding that additionally, nearly 40% of clients were either undertaking layoffs or anticipating layoffs due to economic certainty. We would also posit that those numbers are increased in the last few months since this survey was conducted. So again, the general theme, economic uncertainty, and uncertainty is increasing and pessimism is increasing. And it's an opportunity for us to help clients through these tough times. Insight 2, more clients are investing in automation. So as you may recall from that last slide, investing in technology was specifically undertaken due to economic uncertainty. Well, we found that 89% of legal services buyers report that their organizations are either actively investing in technology or they plan on doing so in the near future. So we see a very large majority that are looking at technological improvements to improve their own internal organizations. We also wanted to look specifically at the top areas where organizations are at least somewhat automated. So this is a question, around specific points of their own internal legal processes and where some automation may be in play. We found document management and employee documentation top the list of where clients are saying there's at least some or minor automation, or automation has started to become implemented. It's not saying that 82% are fully automated in these areas. It's just that it just gives us a sense of where automation focus is going to be placed. And so this is another key aspect of automation that we wanted to look into for where our clients are focusing. Additionally, Insight 3 focuses more specifically on AI. As I mentioned, AI is ever present. I'm sure everyone here has had many conversations and thinks about its impacts pretty much on a daily basis. What we found is that AI usage amongst legal buyers has arrived and it is increasing. So we have over half that claim to have adopted at least some AI into their internal legal processes, and we have another 26% that are actively exploring options. So when you add that up, 77% of our buyers and our clients are saying that that AI is going to be a part of their own internal process, specifically in these legal process areas. Now, the flip side of this is that the AI implementation and business impacts are sometimes hard to project for our buyers specifically. So we have some specific findings that say 37% of buyers are lacking confidence in their organizations to use AI to solve their internal legal challenges, and 44% are agreeing that AI's impacts are overstated. So there is definitely not a full consensus yet about how to implement AI, what AI ultimately means to them as an individual, to their organizations as a whole. But what we do know is their expectations of law firms to wield AI to improve their service experience is definitely increasing, and they have pretty lofty expectations. So what these findings represent are the percentage of our clients that expect AI to either somewhat or significantly improve each attribute. So what we see here is that 72% of our clients expect AI, when implemented at the law firm, to improve the efficiency and speed of that relationship. 61% just generally expect their overall quality of outcomes to improve. 60%, expect their accessibility and convenience of the interaction of the relationship to improve. Similar statements can be made around problem solving and issue resolution, accuracy and data handling, things like that. So the main takeaway here is that buyers have pretty high expectations of what AI in theory can do, and they're placing that on law firms to be able to implement AI to improve the service experience in these following ways. These higher expectations can definitely present a challenge, but obviously the most innovative firms have an opportunity to capitalize in this area and utilize AI benefits to be kind of visionaries and also kind of shepherd their clients into this new space with AI integration in all of these areas. So I'll just take a step back out of the research here and kind of open this up to some questions that Eric and I kind of wanted to ask of ourselves and of the data. So, Eric, in general, you spend a lot of time with this data and other data. Kind of what stood out from you in what stood out to you in terms of this year's research?
Think there's a couple things, Darian, and the first of which was that when there is economic uncertainty, we see people really starting to take a kind of a defensive stance, especially as it comes to their spend. And so they start to ask themselves questions like, okay, can I do this and have this, minimize this spend in some particular way? If I'm going to choose, if I need to choose a new law firm, or I've decided that I want to choose a new law firm, how do I make sure that I am selecting a firm that I know is one that can deliver on what they say they're going to deliver on? And so we just see, all of the risk aversion that I know we're going to talk some about in this next section. All of that really gets magnified a little bit when you have that economic uncertainty. And as you mentioned, really, as fresh as this data is, it's already in terms of economic uncertainty out of favor. The recent data from Stanford and Northwestern, shows that even since January, we've had an almost doubling in sort of the perceived economic uncertainty. Within the US and globally. And so that's going to have a huge impact, or continue to have a huge impact. And I just would encourage everybody on this call to just be thinking about through that lens, right? If our buyers are, and our existing clients are having to go through with a little bit more diligence on every aspect of their decision, every aspect of their spend. How do we get out in front on that and make sure that we are not only delivering value, but that we're actually getting credit for the value? This is one of the places where I think it becomes even more important to really show your work, and make sure that you're, getting credit for all the hard work that you're doing on behalf of clients.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely agreed on that. I'm also curious to get your take on kind of the impact that AI and automation will have on law firms specifically.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me that when we look at this, what we're seeing is people are starting to dabble on their own side, and I even at Clearly Rated, I've seen us do some of this as well, right? Where we will take a contract, and instead of sending it to our legal counsel immediately, we'll, run it through one of the AI models, ask some questions of it, and then we'll say, "Hey, is this right?" And we'll look for more of a confirmatory. And again, the goal on that is basically to educate ourselves a little bit, but also to make sure that we are really having legal counsel spend the time on the place that they are really best, right? Which is, taking the context, looking around the things that maybe we wouldn't see, or that an AI model wouldn't see. But it's really clear that the expectations are there, even though nobody really has command, or very few people really have command over exactly how to utilize these AI models, and whether or not to trust them, right? I think we've all, anybody who's dabbled a little bit there has been burned at different times, and so it's not there yet, but it's also, one of the most exciting technologies to come across, the industry and our table, and just societally, since the smartphone, probably, in terms of the impact that I think it's probably going to have. And so we have to make sure that we are getting credit, and that we are showing how we are at our most efficient with the use of technology. And AI is just one of those technology tools to be utilizing. But you probably should be talking about it some, because if you're not, competitors are. And I think that buyers, it's pretty clear from the research, want their law firm to be utilizing whatever they can to make the work product better and more efficient, and to manage cost structure. So I think that that's kind of the place where we see that come in. When you looked at the data, I'd be curious to see what are some of the areas that you found to, where there's a kind of more or less optimism. Was there any difference, by segments, or as you kind of look one step deeper into that data, anything that stood out to you as well?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. Generally we see to your kind of to your some of your points that you were making, we generally see more optimism in when it comes to technology and specifically AI in areas like efficiency and speed. And as clients expect AI to kind of likely manage a lot more smaller and repeatable tasks, kind of, given the example that you just gave there. And so generally, I think the optimism around it, I think we could say is fairly high based on the number of clients that expect service improvements in all these different areas. So I would view that as a pretty optimistic lens of what our clients are saying that AI is going to do for them and technology is going to do for them. I do think there is probably a lot of confusion into the actual realities and implications of what that means. And in a sense of maybe a more pessimistic view of it, and you mentioned this too, Eric, just in your last statements there. There is kind of a sticking point for some clients where our data is actually showing that 1 in 5 buyers is actually expecting trust and reliability to go down as a result of AI implementation. So it kind of becomes, it becomes incumbent upon us to really understand where to implement these things to help improve the process, but where specifically not to, in order to start to, combat the erosion of that trust and reliability that we work so hard to gain. So there definitely is, there's a lot of aspects of it that are optimistic, but there's some drawbacks for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then last question, Eric, I'm just kind of curious. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to explain why we share perceptions on the economy, as it's, really hard for any individual, industry or firm to influence or combat. What can you tell the audience about why it's important to understand that? What can they do practically with that information?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm reading a book right now, Darreon, that talks about understanding whether a problem is a gravity problem, which is to say that like you're not going to change gravity, and so you could perhaps change how you interact with gravity to make something easier or more efficient, but you're not going to fundamentally remove the binds of gravity. And I think the same holds true for us on the economy. We're not going to be able to directly influence the overall economic conditions and perceptions, right? Which are probably as important, maybe more important than the actual performance of the economy is the perception of those, the trends and the uncertainty as a part of that. But I do think it's a really important lens to look through because we just actually see buyer behavior. Happens very differently, right? We talked about the sort of retraction of risk taking, and the requirement to kind of de-risk those decisions. We look at things, that there's less discretionary spend. All of the spend is looking, in through the lens of not abundance, but the lens of potential challenges and trying not to go backwards. And so if you look at that through that anxiety, that our clients feel and that the prospects feel, we just have to understand as marketers that the lens that they're looking at us through is a little bit different than it is in those stronger economic times. And things even on the thought leadership, I know you're going to talk at the end, but the thought leadership pieces that really resonate in this time period are things that are kind of around doing more with less. They're not necessarily the expansionary things that we would typically see. We're trying not to go backwards. We're trying to really justify the fees that we're charging, and also find opportunities to add more value. And we just have to be really, really clear that that value is getting added. So let's kind of make sure now that we head into this this actual buyer decision making. And there's some of the data in this is some of the data that I found most compelling this year. So how do buyers make decisions about which law firms to engage, and maybe kind of take us through the data points that stood out to you most in this section.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we found is that Insight 4 here talks about how buyers are more often they're starting with referrals, network or professional referrals. But we find that online reputation management helps seal the deal and helps, is just as crucial in many areas as that first referral. So this visual here is showing how legal buyers are starting their decision-making process. So we currently have 58% that start from day one. They start with the referral, and then 42% are using other means, and those are other online means. So law firm websites, search engines, things like that. So we don't want to undersell the continued importance of the professional referral, the network referral, and having that be the catalyst for this decision-making process. But we do also want to focus on kind of the other parts of reputation management that really are key to this journey. And we found that when buyers are looking online for information specifically on law firms, the things that they are looking for are firm expertise, ratings from current clients, firm's specialization, testimonials from clients, and information on individual legal professionals. So the three main categories that we could kind of summarize that are, the expertise and specialization. Can the firm does it focus on the areas that I need it to? Does it can it offer the social proof in the term, in term of what their current clients are saying about them, what their, testimonials from clients and customers, and then what are an additional piece of reputation being, information on individual legal professionals. So we talk a lot about at ClearlyRated, we talk a lot about managing reputation and the importance that that reputation really plays in this whole process. And these findings really highlight that. Beyond referral, most are using a multitude of touch points and resources to make this decision. So, managing all these aspects is absolutely key to winning business. Beyond this, we found we wanted to ask specifically, and this is a very related finding to kind of those last figures I was talking about, but we wanted to ask specifically about the most important aspects of a firm's website. And so we had respondents rank these aspects, and what we found is that specialization and expertise, we've got highlighted in that box there, that really matches what we found in terms of what they're generally looking for. Well, they're looking for that specifically on your website too. So, and then right below that, we've got information on individual lawyers, and associates, and those things are more often sought out. Those aspects are more important than more basic things of a website, like ease of navigation and ease of information sharing. So it really highlights how important areas of specialization and expertise really are, and it's the two most sought after pieces of information online and in general. So it's really important that your firm reflects what buyers are really hunting for during this decision-making process. We also wanted to look at this concept of de-risking. So I mentioned this earlier, and Eric mentioned it briefly, but Insight 5 is buyers want to de-risk their purchase. So um, when we take a step back and think about it, any purchase decision comes with a little bit of risk. Some purchase decisions come with a lot more risk, and partnering with a law firm could be considerably more risky if we're not able to prove to our buyers that that's the right decision for them to make. So we wanted to look at, when they're vetting law firms, what are the most influential factors that they are considering when making this decision. So again, very related information to some of the previous findings, but we found that referrals, not surprisingly, still top there. We also found that reputation of key contacts is actually tied with referrals for the most influential on buyers. So again, referrals is an aspect of reputation, but the actual reputation of that key contact, associate lawyer, that is just as important. And being able to clearly display that and find information on that person's reputation is also very critical in this process. And then beyond that, we have some of the other things that we've mentioned, specialization and things like that. So on the flip side, a couple other highlights I wanted to point out. It's important to know what things are influential. It's also important to know what things aren't as influential in this process. So we asked quite a few of different pieces of information, and some there's some disagreement about how influential things like social media posts are, blog posts are from a law firm. And actually, we have more than half that say those that social media posts, for example, are not influential in this decision-making process. So really important that we are focusing our efforts and showing up where we need to be showing up, and deprioritizing areas specifically when it comes to client acquisition and the decision-making process and vetting process as well. So ultimately, buyers want proof, and we can help give them proof to help answer the following questions that we outline in our report. Basically, the three questions we want to focus on are: is this firm established and stable? Can this firm help my business specifically? And does this firm prove that it can deliver what it promises? And if we can answer those three questions specifically, we know we've hit the mark with our online reputation, our firm website specifically, and then managing all of these other touch points in the decision process as well. Additionally, we looked at this concept of the day one firm, and uh, Eric and I had this idea to recreate some research that Google and Bain have done in terms of general B2B buyer behavior. And that research actually found that 81% of all B2B buyers have what they call a day one list, which is basically a kind of an intuitive list in their head that they start with before they do any other sort of searching or vetting or Googling or whatever it may be. They start with a short list of brands in their head, whether that may be acquired via prior experience with that, just general knowledge from industry peers, things like that. And so this is just kind of an instinctual list of brands or firms that they have in their head. And we found similarly for our audience here, we found that when buyers first start a search, we actually have 68% of our buyers that report starting their journey with a day one list. So before they do, any sort of action to search for a firm, the majority already have some names in their head. And of those, 96% of those are ultimately selecting a firm from their day one list. So, and then an additional piece of information is that the number of average firms on that list in their head is typically around three. So, in order to grow, it's not just about, service and delivering exceptional service. You actually need a strategy to showcase your quality in order to, appear on these day one lists, these day one firms. And so, all of the things that we've been talking about are just components of kind of the strategy of making sure that we're top of mind when a buyer is thinking about partnering with a new law firm. Last insight in this section is that, as Eric mentioned, thought leadership is actually a powerful tool for influencing prospects. We found that 87% of buyers say thought leadership or industry insight actually influences their decision, and positively influences their decision to ultimately partner with that firm. So, definitely important for us to be showing up and acting as the professional guidance, the professional counselor, providing insights and industry thought leadership, and showing up in these areas to really help bolster the idea of maybe becoming one of those day one firms, and maybe becoming ultimately a brand that our buyers are thinking of. So we wanted to look specifically too into some of the most valuable thought leadership topics, and these are just a few of them. We asked a multitude of these, and there's a pretty wide array of what people are expecting and what they're interested in. But some of the top ones that came up here are corporate governance and compliance, data privacy, cybersecurity, litigation trends in general, dispute resolution. So things like that. There's a myriad of topics that we can focus on, but these are what our buyers are, currently the most interested in. So, Eric, I wanted to open this back up for some discussion here, and kind of bring back the topic of the day one list. So you and I have talked a lot about this, but just curious what you think the implications are for law firms.
Yeah, to me, this is maybe the most important finding that we've had in the last 2 years of research. And it really puts a sharp point on the fact that if we are not a firm that has a strong brand within a very specific audience of current clients and prospective clients, it is going to be really, really difficult to make our way into consideration on it. And so if you think back to, marketing textbook, right, it was, problem recognition, and then it was awareness, and then it was consideration, and then down deeper into the funnel. And what this is basically telling us is that, look, in the legal space, the vast majority of people that are going to get the work are doing so because they are getting into that consideration set very, very early in the process, literally day one. And so that I think plays really strongly within the thought leadership. I think it's a really, huge aspect of what we're trying to do. And so if you're trying to, reach out and engage in clients, with clients and prospects, without that strength of having built a brand in a specific industry or niche or practice area, it's going to be really, really difficult to make that work. And so to me, this means that it really also then, if you buy into this, which I do, it really means that we have to go to market with a really specialized strategy. And one of the things, Darreon, that we've seen kind of in the data is this sort of three-tier approach, with the bottom tier that being, clients and prospects trying to figure out, okay, can this firm do the work? Are they experts in the work that they do? And that's kind of the first checkbox. And then the second level on this is, okay, do they work with firms like me? Can they bring extra contacts beyond the billable time, because they can say, oh, you know what, for other small startups, that we work with that are PG backed, or PE backed, that, this is kind of some of the things that we're seeing them put in place, right? This is some of the safeguards, or this is some of the things you need to be thinking about, in terms of protection on a cybersecurity standpoint. Well, that's really valuable to us as a software firm that is PE backed, in a way that if a firm, could have the same expertise, but if they don't work with others that are like us, it's harder for them to get the value add beyond the billable work that's being done. And then the third piece of this is, okay, are they going to be able to deliver? And that's, I think, where, we come into that CX component, right? So your testimonials, your case studies, your general reputation, and really those three areas are key. But what we see oftentimes is a lot of the law firm marketing is really based on that key bottom level, which is, hey, let's show in our thought leadership that we really understand this topic. And I would just encourage people to think about, how do you show that you understand that topic within the context of this industry or this type of organization, because that's going to really resonate even deeper than you would be otherwise. And so that's kind of my takeaways on this piece of it. But talk a little bit about some of the, things that you see in terms of like de-risking this. Like, what are some things that firms can actually do to de-risk and to amplify the voices of their, successful accounts that they're already working with?
Yeah, I think we have over a decade of research now that suggests, and we're not the only ones. So there's plenty of research out there that shows, the power of social proof in basically all aspects of purchasing. So for our uses here, amplifying specific clients of success stories. And this can take a multitude of different ways. It can be testimonials, it can be a star ratings, it can be star ratings in an email. We use some of these obviously internally at ClearlyRated, and are strong proponents of things like that. But it can be in-depth case studies, and to Eric's point, in-depth case studies that are have a multitude available that are relevant to specific practice areas and things like that. So the power of allowing your clients and just in a general sense customers to sell the business rather than the business selling the business is just proven over and over again to be very powerful and very influential. And so those are what we see time and time again, and those that elevate those successful client relationships, that elevate the success stories, they're the ones that are having the best success in winning business. So
Yeah, yeah, that
yeah.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Eric, let's go ahead and move to our last section here. And I know that this is your favorite, which is how law firms can improve the client experience, and by doing so, their bottom line as well.
Yeah, before you jump into this, Darian, just one thing for the audience to kind of take into account on this. I actually just did this analysis for another professional service firm, large billion-dollar plus firm, and we looked at their annual data. And what we found was that they actually got more growth in new fees from their existing accounts than they did from new accounts. And in fact, it wasn't even really close. It was about 5 to 1, the growth that they got from existing accounts versus new accounts. And you think about the leg up in just what we just talked about, right? You're on the day one list, or you should be on the day one list. Let me just say this, with your existing clients, you should be on the day one list in almost every case. That's not actually true. We see all the time in our survey responses. I had one just the other day, that we saw come in saying, "Hey, we love working with you. I just wish you guys had folks that were dealing with nonprofits specifically, so I could bring you in on a couple boards that I sit on." And our respondent was like, "How do they not know this? Like, we absolutely do this." And so don't assume that you're on the day one list just because you're doing work with them already. But I mean, there's so much opportunity for growth. Obviously avoiding going backwards, so avoiding churn, but also unlocking those experiences that lead to referrals, that lead to expansions, that lead to cross sell, that lead to preservation of fees, because you're not getting pushed back on, because they see the value and they're thrilled with the relationship. So I'm excited. You probably can hear from my voice. I'm always excited about this section. So what did we learn this year?
Yeah, that's great. Eric had some hot off the presses findings there to share with us. I love it. Yes, so this is looking about improve, monitoring the client experience and ways that we can improve it. And so one of the key insights that we found is that communication is key to satisfaction and retention. I keep mentioning the things that Eric and I have looked at for years and years and years. The entirety of my time here, communication being key to satisfaction and retention has been a drum beat that we've been banging the drum for forever. If you can maintain regular, consistent, and productive communication with clients, there are there are many rewards. Specifically, there are satisfaction rewards, there are loyalty rewards, there are engagement rewards. We measured in this research, we measured the level of interaction with a law firm during an active engagement, and we ran that against the net promoter score of those groups that answered that way. And we found that if constant or consistent in communication is definitely leads to higher satisfaction. In fact, in some cases, it can be, we could basically see a doubling of communication versus a doubling of net promoter score compared to those that are receiving, less frequent communication. And so the storyline here is fairly simple, but it's extremely important. There's a relationship between a client satisfaction as measured by net promoter score for us in this research, with their primary law firm and the frequency with which they interact with that firm. So those that get frequent communication can have scores, much higher. And we know based on all the research that we do that net promoter score is a leading indicator of retention and account growth, and all of those good measures that we want to see from increased efforts on our communication here. So we had to highlight that, and we had to pull this out again. Communication, communication, communication. So our last insight that we're going to run through here is around onboarding, and specifically how effective onboarding processes can lead to lasting relationships. So the most important aspects at the start of their relationship with a law firm, when we asked, was that the firm understands their needs and objectives, establishes credibility and trust, provides clear communication, properly sets expectations on deliverables, timelines, and establishes confidentiality and security measures. So we've hit on all of these topics. And so what this demonstrates is that onboarding is kind of it's a springboard, and it's kind of a microcosm for what the relationship overall can be, and it kind of sets the groundwork. So when firms kick off that relationship with the client with clear, efficient onboarding, they begin that client relationship with great service and can improve their customer retention and, and growth of that customer as well throughout the lifetime. So furthering that point, we wanted to look at kind of the negative impacts of what might happen if mistakes were made at onboarding. And so we asked quite a few questions of the onboarding process itself, and then we ran that against, the resulting satisfaction with their law firm if those mistakes were made. And what we found is that um, failing to leverage technology to streamline the onboarding process was actually the most often cited failure. So, there are slight issues with technology in that onboarding process. But the interesting thing and the impactful thing is that we actually saw a decline of 53 points in Net Promoter Score from those that said that mistake was made versus those that didn't experience that mistake. And then additionally, those bottom two rows, though, those bottom two rows there, failing to share updates throughout the onboarding process. So again, a communication concern. 51-point NPS decline for those that experience this, and then failing to share timelines and or project roadmaps. Again, expectations and communication down. Those that experienced that actually had a Net Promoter Score that was 44 points lower than those that didn't. So failing in any of these areas is costly. So keeping onboarding processes buttoned up is absolutely critical. One caveat I do want to say is that in general, this industry, the clients of this industry, compared to any of the other industries that we looked at, actually had fewer mistakes at onboarding. So I think generally we can be proud in many cases of the onboarding experience that we are currently offering. But what the takeaway for us here is that any mistakes are very costly, and so we just really have to set that foundation to make sure that relationship gets off on the right track and maintains a positive outcome throughout the engagement. So, Eric, final section wrap up here. Kind of some maybe not groundbreaking statements when I say communication is key, but I'm just curious, what do you think are the key takeaways from this year's research on the client experience and specifically about communication? Because I know you love to talk about how important it is.
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out to me, and we see it in this research, we've seen it in other research that we've done, is that communication, especially proactive communication, is the cure to a lot of things that ails client relationships in the legal industry. And so trying to find ways as marketers to encourage, put a lens on and sort of celebrate when there is proactive communication going on, I think is a massive win for the industry, and to the extent that you can really encourage your partners to be engaging in consistent communication, even when there's not necessarily a huge update, right? Just letting people know. And this is an area where I think we can learn a lot from the consulting space. And when you come up in consulting, what they tell you is that, you should never surprise your client, and B, they should never have to ask you for an update. And I think that industry does a really good job in a way that some of the other industries, including legal, accounting, that we work with, don't, in terms of staying on top of proactive communication. So I just would encourage everybody to be thinking through those lenses as we go to do this. Even when we're doing the surveys, we've had times when people say, "Well, hey, we need to be billing hours, not responding to get responses for a survey." And we've actually studied this with a client of ours, a large client in the recruiting space. And what they found was that actually the number of opportunities and leads, expansion opportunities that they got increased during the 2 weeks, twice a year that they had a survey in the field. And it makes sense, right? When you're reaching out and you're asking people, hey, I just want to make sure that you had a chance to give us some feedback. It's really important to us. We're always trying to get better. We always want to make sure that we're delivering, incredible value for you. So if you have some time to give us feedback, I would love to hear that feedback either in the survey or reach out to me directly. I mean, that's a great message, right? We sometimes lose the forest for the trees, and on these CX programs, we think that the goal is to get responses and that the goal is to get a high score, but the goal is to actually positively impact the client experience. And oftentimes that does lead to more responses. Oftentimes that does lead to your score going up. And that's part of why we measure it. But just think about that whole process and how you architect that process through the lens of a good excuse to increase communication, which is one of the biggest areas that we fall down on as an industry there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Curious, Eric, we're seeing people automate more and more of their survey programs and getting feedback throughout the client life cycle, if I can say that word.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the lessons and best practice that you've seen there as it pertains to the onboarding of clients.
Yeah, if you look at this through a client journey lens, Darreon, we're seeing a lot more of people kind of going from kind of that report card mentality, which is the once or twice a year relationship survey, which are important and are helpful, but they're evolving that really to a more of a roadmap or even a GPS, right, which is giving us signals in real time as to the health of our clients. And so we're seeing people starting to go down the road of really matter specific feedback. So, feedback at the start of a matter, after a matter closes, things along those lines. We're also seeing people architect things, for example, a different route for new client onboarding and getting some feedback there. We're seeing people sometimes do if there's M&A, if the firm is bringing on another firm, or if there is retirement, so for as part of succession planning, those clients that are all going through these major changes, joining a new firm, their key partner retiring, things along those lines. Those are all major inflection points in that relationship, and probably should be handled a little bit differently, or should make sure that we have a separate process, and B, a way to measure that process and ensure that we're staying close to the clients during those times. So I think that that's a really key element on this. I had a question for you that came into the Q&A, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this. So the question is, what are the biggest mistakes that you're seeing on the onboarding side? Is it that we're not taking the care that we need to, or is it that the partners are not following through how they should? Any insight on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And candidly, I think it's a little it's both, I think, of those things mentioned. And I will say again, I will reiterate that the onboarding process already provided by this industry is better than we typically see in the other industries that we're researching. And so I think, yeah, some of the more common mistakes we're seeing is the technology piece, as we highlighted there. So, we didn't have a specific follow-up question about what could be better about the technology utilized there, but we know that expectations of technology to improve efficiency and speed are sky high at this point. So, any mistakes or any fumbling of technological processes at that beginning point is probably a bit of a red flag for a client. In general, I would say that, it's a double-edged sword, right? And we kind of all know this, but onboarding is so important because it's either the springboard for a very successful and lasting and profitable relationship, Or on the flip side, it's, it's the start and kind of a microcosm of a frustrating and, a frustrating process that ultimately leads to dissatisfaction and, churn or, account loss, things like that. So, um, I did want to quote our VP of customer success here, Bridget Harper, and this quote is in our report here because I like it. It's a big long quote that I like, but I'm going to pull at the very end here. It's the key to building trust and long-term success. And some of her things that she highlights at the end is do not rush this step. So there's no need to rush onboarding. Take your time, make sure everything is done properly and specifically to that client. Some things aren't applicable across all clients. So that's an important key. Also, document everything and communicate frequently. Notice how she used communicate frequently, and we didn't even prompt her to. Look at that.
Yeah.
So she knows the success at that step as well.
Yeah. So I know we're close on time. We have two questions in the Q&A, so let's get to these before we wrap things up. The first question you can take on this, which is, it seems like the client experience continues to evolve and the expectations continue to evolve. What do you think should be on our radar for the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and not an easy answer. And something I am curious as a researcher myself. One of the big things about client expectation, client experience changes and expectations is going to be, again, it's technology. I feel like a broken record, but AI implementation, how we are, and just general automation and technology implementation at both at the law firm level and at the our client organizational level, how those are changing those interactions. Does it make our relationships with our key contacts, does it make those less personal? Does it enhance those? Does it make it there's a myriad of things that will be changing. And so what I would suggest is that I've never seen research that says that people are overwhelmingly excited to lose a personal touch, or overwhelmingly excited for AI to dominate every aspect of a professional service relationship. So I would just approach it with an open mind, look for opportunities to implement, hopefully low hanging fruit things like efficiency, speed, maybe data processes, maybe some deliverables we could look into. But be very cautious and don't let those technological improvements undermine the trust and those relationships that we've built, that we take so much time and effort to build. So
Yeah, I think
yeah.
the piece that I would add to that too is that I really believe that as we get more efficient with the core amount of work that we're doing, that there's this huge opportunity to leverage the technology to gain the efficiency and to give back some of that time to do the things that people really value that we're not great at, which is that proactive touch, adding the context, the clear understanding of the client's situation so that you can translate the technical recommendation within the context of their situation. The last question that we have on this is, if we're trying to roll out a client experience program, what do you see as the first steps on this? Um, I think this is a great question too, and I'll let you add to it, but I'll tackle the first part of this, which is the key thing. And actually, Lisa Simon, who's CMO of Holland and Hart, said this one time. It really stuck with me. She said the number one goal as a marketer at a law firm of your client experience survey is to get to do a second one. And so that first survey, what you want to do is you want to get in the field, you want to get past any of the trepidation that the firm has. And then what I would say is, keep it simple. You want to keep it, 10 questions or less. You want to really focus on giving an opportunity for your clients to give feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. And then you want to build in opportunities to celebrate on that. So we build in, automate the capture of testimonials from your satisfied clients. So the approval and capture of those testimonials saves a ton of time. Peer recognition internally. You should be sharing, 5 positive client responses for every 1 negative that you have to deconstruct. We want to make sure that this is a positive experience for people. So those would be the key elements that I would tell you to think about. Darreon, anything that you would add from your experience?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I would also add that whatever information the survey, whatever findings you discover, use them. So don't just say, oh, we've got a great net promoter score, everything's great. Let's just, let it, because that is actually, we have research that suggests that a client that provides feedback and then doesn't hear or experience any different, if they don't hear the results of the general feedback that was given, to that firm, or if they don't experience any changes in that relationship as a result of that feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Eric mentioned the positive side, so celebrate testimonials, celebrate positive stories. Negative side, address issues, right? Understand both sides of that, but don't let that information go to die in a spreadsheet and not do anything with it. That's actually counterproductive to this whole process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Darreon. I really appreciate you going through the report with us. Thank you, everybody, for participating in today's call. Like we said, the full report is available. You can download it there. If you have any questions for us, or if we weren't able to get to your questions, please do reach out to either of us directly. We'd be happy to engage further and talk about your specific situation. So, with that, we'll close it out. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.